Welcome to Truth or Raps. So this episode is going to be about rap, but it's also not going to be about rap. The inciting factor is that's an interesting term for this episode actually. The inciting factor is having watched Matt McKinley's new video on quantum of conscience, and he's just going through news headlines and sort of talking about how ridiculous it all can seem. And he covered a certain news headline that he explained in a way where it was like you do get the sense that there might be something going on behind this particular person supposedly writing this particular thing and them being associated with the semi-governmental organization that they're associated with, and then CNN picking it up and sensationalizing what they wrote as something that I would say it's clearly not. Although, if in some way this is something that was intended to happen, like this is all part of the story. It's like a sideshow, in other words. Then I guess it was intended to be written in such a way where it could be taken like this, but. Let me just get to it. Well, okay, so in the past, I've talked about how, particularly, let me actually tell you, because there is a video, yeah, so particularly the video on my channel called To Play is to Lose, but all other videos too, like, for example, yeah, for example, I think the episode called And I Had, period, as well as the episode called To Play is to Lose, and, let's see, there was another episode, oh, you know what, that was To Play is to Lose, but I've talked about it. But essentially, the idea of, now, I grew up with rap music. If you subscribe to the Alan Watt conception of your culture being given to you for each specific generation, which, I mean, it seems obvious that it is. For example, my generation got the emo music. There was a very, very obvious romanticization of a certain kind of self-harm activity that was going on in the emo movement. And you could say, like, there wasn't. I get the idea, like, kids are just sad sometimes. My Chemical Romance, bands like that. By the way, I love My Chemical Romance. Like, I will legitimately be buying their CD if they ever come back again. But, My Chemical Romance, bands like, maybe something sort of like The Used, or a band like, maybe like Brand New or something. I'm not sure exactly which band did what. But, or like a band like AFI or something. Like AFI, literally there's a song where it just repeats over and over again, like, we dance in misery, and it says, or something like that. It's from the album that Silver and Cold was from. And, like, I like that album. I bought that album not too long ago, but I had, of course, listened to stuff from it before, if not the entire thing. And AFI is very clearly. Let me fucking get you the lyrics actually, because AFI is very clearly romanticizing feeling sad, and I would say even, I don't want to say AFI necessarily did this specifically, but like, I don't know if they did this intentionally or not, but I'll read you some of this, because AFI is clearly promoting maybe not that physical self-harm, and I don't want to, what's that term for it? Not, I don't want to say something about defamation. I don't want to say something like, I'm not saying something about any of these artists in terms of, like, this artist specifically was promoting this idea or this art, maybe. Well, I mean, certainly artists promote ideas, but I don't want to say like this artist specifically was promoting some kind of like self-harm as romantic aesthetic or something like that. Like specifically, I'm not sure if any given artist would have like been meaning to do that, but just check out this. I think it might be. You know what? I think we dance in misery. Maybe it's dancing through Sunday. I don't even know. But I do want to read these lyrics to you because they are just very on the nose. Yeah. It's Dancing Through Sunday on Sing the Sorrow by AFI. This is the chorus. Oh, we dance in misery, and we dance on, and we dance on. Oh, we dance in misery, all lost in the arms of our misery. Oh, oh, we dance in misery, and we dance on, and we dance on. Swept off our feet by misery, we're swept into the shadows. And all along the way, the instrumental track is very energetic, and the guy who's singing the song, he's singing it in his usual sort of, kind of Broadway kind of style in a certain sense. Like he has a very stagey tone. Not that it's not a good tone, but it's similar to a Marilyn Manson. And I love Marilyn Manson as a like lead singer. But Marilyn Manson has a very stagey, very like show tuney kind of presentation. Also similar to Gerard Way. Actually, really a lot of these singers, whether it be the My Chemical Romance guy, or the Gerard Way, or the AFI guy, or Marilyn Manson of the band Marilyn Manson, whom I wouldn't necessarily put with this because he has a bit of a different style than the emo sort of fun style. But like these artists promoting these kinds of things, they often have a very stagey kind of presentation. Like it often sounds like they're really like hamming it up there. Oh, we dance in misery and we dance so like you could sort of get the sense of like this guy like snapping his fingers, like standing against a building, kicking his feet out and singing this, like kind of doing a little like Ryan Gosling La La Land twirl on his feet as he says, oh, we dance in misery. And like it was to the point where like I was like, I shouldn't be listening to this because this is just bad conditioning for myself. Like literally someone sort of happily, but like happily and theatrically and romantically singing, oh, we dance in misery. Over and over again. Oh, we dance in misery. Oh, we dance in misery. Oh, we dance in misery. Like that's not just going into your mind listening to it. That's going into specifically like the minds of the kids of like my generation who were given that music to like feel really good about and feel really romantic about and stuff like that. Like I was one of those kids, and I didn't really get into the emo stuff, and maybe somewhat luckily for me, I sort of got hit by some of the cultural conditioning of like, emo is stupid, or like, sort of the emo is kind of distasteful thing. So, for example, I had a couple of My Chemical Romance albums or so, and I liked them well enough, but at the same time, like, I felt like, I feel drawn to emo, but I don't really want to go into it. Something about it seems uncool, but the thing is, it was cool, like, or at least the thing is, it was popular, and it was ubiquitous. Everywhere you turned, like, if you were sort of going through the circles of, like, teenagers and stuff, everywhere you turned, you were hearing, like, lyrics like that. Or System of a Down isn't really part of this either, but lyrics like, my self-righteous SUI blank blank CI blank blank DE. My self-righteous blank, like in the song Chop Suey. System of a Down sings, and it's also in a very theatrical performance. You don't understand, and it's even sort of stating it in the song lyrics, and I love System of a Down, but it's even sort of stating in the song lyrics, like, you just don't understand what I'm going through, and like this is why this is my self-righteous blank is a good thing to do, or of course the song probably had it sort of has layers, and so it's sort of self-critical in saying this, but you don't understand, or something like, you don't understand my self-righteous blank, 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 a 3-syllable word. I cry when angels deserve to die, and then, so it has some anger in it, but also some sort of some sort of emo type romanticism of like a certain self-harm kind of thing. And so that's the stuff that I was given. But you know what else I was given? While, see, the thing is, and this wasn't quite as big, but while the subculture of emo was sort of, sinking into my generation, and I'm not blaming the music, I'm not necessarily blaming entertainment, but I am pointing to entertainment as cultural conditioning that was certainly there and pushed very heavily and looked really cool to people of my generation. This might be the last time you see me smoke an actual like cigarette on this rather than like tobacco in a pipe. I'm just, or whatever, like I'm just, it's much more expensive to buy cigarettes, and it's actually, there's a certain like difference to it. Like it feels like just smoking the tobacco itself is probably better in many ways. Even this little filter thing I really don't trust. Like, if you don't do this, but I once, like, truly don't do it. Like, seriously, I'm telling you, stay away from this kind of attempt. But once in college, I had, like, just a cigarette filter on its own, and I just, like, breathed through the cigarette filter, thinking, like, well, this is what you do when you smoke a cigarette. You breathe through the filter. No. If you just breathe through a filter on its own, it feels like, it feels almost like taking salvia or something in terms of, like, you're just knocked back. Just like a very intense thing that feels very alarming, and it's like, oh my god, don't, seriously, like it's it's similar to like biting on tinfoil or something. Like, it's just a shock if you try to do that. Do not do that. And ever since doing that, I thought, well, what's the difference between really smoking a cigarette and just breathing through this thing? It's like, it doesn't seem like it's really a different act, except perhaps in terms of degree. So, I bought this pack of cigarettes last night, partially just for novelty, because I don't usually buy them. I think the last pack of American Spirits I bought was like probably at least months ago. Generally, I've bought rolling tobacco, which is better, or pipe tobacco, as it's actually called on the bag. But in any case, and by the way, just spotlight on Rhode Island, or spotlight on government injustice. Rhode Island taxes rolling papers, like zigzag type rolling papers, or just any kind. They tax rolling papers so much that for a little thin pack of like 50 rolling papers that costs, I think, like $2.49 in Massachusetts, it costs, I think, over $10 in Rhode Island for that little pack of rolling papers. And it's to the point where, like, I've had people at two different stores, one of them specifically a smoke shop, one of them not, tell me, like, oh yeah, because of the Rhode Island taxes, these rolling papers are so expensive that it literally doesn't make sense to buy them here. And you might say, well, that's great. If it seems like Rhode Island really wanted to tell people not to smoke cigarettes, so they overtax rolling papers to the point where buying them just doesn't even make sense anymore. And it's like, yeah, it's sort of genius that they use the force of the state to tell you what you can and cannot buy, and yet here's the thing, they're always mealy-mouthed about it. So here's the thing, the government, it's just, none of these people have actual standards, because if they did, at least one set of their standards would disrupt another set of things that they're supposedly, or another set of things that they're doing, or whatever. Like, basically, if they had any consistent standards, everything would break down, because you really can't have consistent standards and be part of an evil system, So, like, or at least maybe you could have evil standards or something, but like, standards of honesty and, goodness and stuff, they're out the window when you're literally telling people, yeah, on the one hand, we really don't want you to smoke cigarettes or whatever else, to the point where we're going to make rolling papers cost like around $10 per package, when in Massachusetts it costs literally $2.49 for the same package. We're going to do that, and to the point where people in stores in Rhode Island literally tell you about it. Like, when you try to buy rolling papers, I've had people, like, two different stores, like, literally sort of essentially tell me don't buy them here, if not literally tell me don't buy them here at all. And this is a store saying, don't buy this thing that I'm selling. So you don't want people to do it. And yet, you don't make it illegal. So people can still do it. You just penalize them for doing it. So it's like, well, we don't want to stop you from doing something, but we're going to slap you real hard in so many words, and we're going to take your money away for actually doing it. It's like, this is supposed to be the land of the free. This is supposed to be the place where a founding story was the Boston Tea Party, where literally not like 100 miles away from me right now or so in Rhode Island, they supposedly threw tea in the water because they were being taxed on it and it was ridiculous. Geographically, not too far away from there, we have Rhode Island in 2024. I hate that phrase. Well, in 2024, now we're doing this. It's like, it doesn't matter what year you're doing something in, but nevertheless, either it's right or it's wrong. Either it's good or bad. It's bad. There's this whole freaking moral relativist thing of like, well, in this day and age, we shouldn't be doing that. It's like, if you shouldn't have been doing that, you never should have been doing that. Either you should or you shouldn't. It doesn't matter what fucking year it is. Are you gonna wait for a show of hands for you to select what kind of fucking sandwich you're gonna be eating? Anyway, I grew up where there were various prongs. I think I got my generation got some of the worst conditioning, although maybe it just gets worse and worse over time. But literally right from Elvis, like sexualizing music, to all the way up until Soulja Boy saying "Superman that hoe," which I think is a term for like ejaculating on a woman's back or something. It's like, that was a fucking popular song with fucking school children, because that was another song that was popular for my generation, like high schoolers, probably elementary schoolers, literally listening to this shit. Or a song that Chris Rock seems to be a disgusting monster, but the song that Chris Rock rightfully pointed out is saying "skeet, skeet, skeet." I remember literally being at like an 8th grade kind of like social get-together or something, or maybe it was later than 8th grade, but at some, I think I don't know, but at some point, like, me and some of my friends were like doing like a big like line of sort of like line dancing or something. We were just like singing along to this song, "From the windows to the wall, to the sweat run down my balls," whatever. I don't want to sing too much of it and then get a copyright strike. But we were kids singing that. We weren't 18 years old. The people getting programmed with this music generally are the kids, because who listens to new music? I mean, sometimes I'll listen to some new metal maybe, but it's like, I'm not checking the top 40s. Who's like sort of having the new music particularly blasted at them? The kids are. And so, my generation, on one hand, we were given this emo music, or emo-type music, like the System of a Down line or the Marilyn Manson stuff. My generation was given this sort of emo music where it was romanticizing, and it truly was. Whether or not the music was good, I think some of it was pretty good. Whether or not they had some interesting, like, emotional themes in there, I like listening to that music and sort of romanticizing weepiness as much as anyone. Like, I really do. Probably a lot more than most people. But it's romanticizing sadness. It's romanticizing misery. Oh, we dance in misery. It's romanticizing misery. It's romanticizing sadness. It's all these thoughts going into your head over and over again, because maybe you keep playing the songs over and over again, whatever. All these thoughts going into your head of like death. Literally, the My Chemical Romance video for Helena, great song. And by the way, great video. But literally that video is set in a funeral. It's the video is this really bombastic, beautifully shot, just beautifully performed funeral that My Chemical Romance is like singing at, and turning into kind of like it, literally turning a funeral into an emo music video, which it basically is anyway, right? But they're literally turning it into that, and they're having a lot of fun, and Gerard Way's like, skipping around the whole like, or he's singing in like in the church as like and then at the end they raise the umbrellas and they like carry this coffin out into the street in like pouring rain. Like, this is shit aimed at like kids. This is shit literally aimed at like preteens, romanticizing a fucking funeral from a band who seems to be associated with a genre of music of romanticizing having that funeral happen because of something to you, because of something that you did there. Like, it's really dark shit. But another side of the really dark shit, and again, there are many sides. There's the over-sexualized side where it tells all the guys, you have to have sex with as many girls as possible. And it tells all the girls, it's empowering to just, have sex with any guy in the world and just, like, let him do whatever he wants to you. Like, let him do it real hard to you. It's really empowering for you. Like that kind of shit. And I could tell you stories about how that shit seemed to affect my generation. But another part of the conditioning that I was given, and many of the people in my generation were given, although less so, because this tended to be maybe a little more underground rappy kind of stuff. But I still remember, like, I remember a high school kid that I didn't really hang out with, whom I was surprised to hear say this, like, talk about the rapper Necro to, like, somebody else in class, like, in sort of like a happy kind of smiling tone of voice. Like, he talked about the rapper Necro, who's known for being like a horrorcore rapper, essentially the death metal of rap music in terms of their lyrics. Like, the lyrics of a horrorcore rapper can be pretty similar to the lyrics of a Cannibal Corpse album, like, truly. And so, of course, Cannibal Corpse and like that kind of death metal-y stuff, that was also sort of like aimed at some of my generation too. And I had some friends who got into metal back then, and even some of the, darker metal and stuff. But particularly for me, it was the rap. Whether it was horrorcore or just like, not even horrorcore, but just sort of battle raps. Like Wu-Tang and stuff, truly. Like, a Wu-Tang line like, with the Force like Luke Skywalker, rhyme author, orchestrate mind torture. Like, something like that. Like, orchestrate mind torture. Or something like, protect your neck. Like, the message of the song Protect Your Neck is, the Wu-Tang guys are out, so you better protect your neck, because they're gonna come, like, chopping heads, like, that's like a Wu-Tang cliche, chopping heads. So, this is a lighter version of it, but then, of course, you have Jedi Mind Tricks, you have Necro, you have rappers like Cage, you have Eminem, who gets into horrorcore stuff sometimes, and, like, check out his video 3 a.m. for, like, his big return to horrorcore with Relapse and stuff, or sort of that aesthetic anyway. I was given a lot of this conditioning as a kid, along with a lot of other kids in my generation. We were given as a template for artistic expression. Literally, we were given, or at least it was presented in the mainstream and semi-mainstream music, as a template for artistic expression, saying violent things. And not saying violent things like you really mean it. Like, specifically, the template is, these rappers are saying violent things that they don't really mean. In most cases, in most, or maybe even all cases, because if they were literally talking to someone, then I guess it could be perceived as a death threat or something, but in most cases, at least, these rappers aren't even talking about someone in particular when they say something like, in my historical oracle, I blast metaphorical editorials, educating in my territorial, get torn, heavily armed with 70 bombs that'll blast. Oh, okay. Well, I'll give you a little Just Allah line from Violent by Design, just part of a Just Allah line. My tongue rips, licking on the blade that slayed you. This is the kind of stuff that I was listening to, and many young kids of my generation were listening to. My tongue ripped, licking on the blade that slayed you. That kind of stuff. And, it is real expression. Like, you may say it's toxic. I may say it's toxic. Just like it might be toxic to play violent video games, just like it might be toxic to watch movies like John Wick. It's very toxic in a certain sense, but in another sense, it is a form of expression. It's like the Dozens, where, it's like a Yo Mama competition, but instead of saying Yo Mama this, Yo Mama that, it's saying, I'll fucking sew your ass cheeks shut and keep feeding you and feeding you and feeding you and like the Wu-Tang skit there. Check out the song Method Man by Wu-Tang Clan, and method spelled out in, like, as if it's an acronym, M.E.T. whatever, Method Man. They have a whole skit saying, they say, torture motherfucker what? I'll fucking take your nuts, laying them out on a dresser, just your nuts, laying there on a fucking dresser, and bang them shits with a spiked bat, blow! Like, this is a famous, iconic Wu-Tang skit. Now, Wu-Tang, you might say, that's sort of more Gen X than millennials. It's like, perhaps, but This was all stuff that was in the water, culturally and mainstreamly in my life. And this is the stuff that I was given. And so I grew up with a culture, and I I shouldn't even have to preface it like this because it is just verbal expression. But I grew up with a culture where one of the venues of verbal expression given to you by multi-million dollar making artists, or even like the underground guys, still fairly famous artists, a mode of expression, there was one mode of expression talking about how much you wanted to K yourself, let's say, and then there's another mode of expression, or one of many others, talking about how I'm gonna K you. Torch a motherfucker what? How much I'm gonna K you, what I'm gonna do to K you. There's these emo songs basically saying K yourself, and then there are these sort of aggressive rap songs basically saying I'm gonna K you. That's the kind of stuff that I grew up with. And now, I in particular, as you may read from my channel description, I got in trouble for that. I got in trouble for working in the same mode of expression. You might say, Matt, that's bullshit. It's totally different things to send somebody some emails with language that you didn't mean sincerely, but you just meant to express your emotions in as intense a way as possible in a set of emails. That's totally different from expressing your emotions in as intense a way as possible in a rap song. It's like, yeah, I get it. I get it that sending someone emails is different from just like writing a rap song. But in terms of like the creation of it, and I'm not saying this as an excuse, I'm not saying this to justify myself or anything. I'll never send emails like that again. I won't say anything like that again because, not because I think anyone who says anything like that is a horrible person. If I thought that, then I'd have to call most of the, or many of the mainstream rappers and, underground rappers that were given to me as a child of my generation horrible people, because that's what they were doing, and they were making money selling that shit to us. And that was being promoted by the culture in one way or another. And then was Wu-Tang not a popular rap group that seemed to get some cultural promotion? Was Eminem not a popular rapper? Was Jedi Mind Tricks not a popular like underground rap group? Was Necro not popular enough for someone in my high school to just sort of randomly say to someone else, like mention listening to Necro and how much they liked that? Were these things not popular? No. Yes, they were popular, and they were modes of expression because it was a mode of expression in these things. It was a part of the genre, essentially, to be saying, I'm going to K you, I'm going to K you, this is how I'm going to do it. Just like that's part of the death metal genre to say that. And yet, if you write some emails, not specifically, and please don't do this ever, but if you were to write some emails like I did, saying like stuff like that, but just saying it to blow off steam against someone that you've never met and someone that you never will meet and then someone that you never contacted again, if you just write that stuff in an email, they will take it as if you're being literal, even though your entire life you've been given the training that this stuff isn't literal. This stuff, whether in the Wu-Tang skit where it's presented as funny, or in the Army of the Pharaohs albums where it's presented as like really aggressive and cool, this stuff was never presented in your life, the conditioning you've received. This stuff was never presented as sincere. It was always presented to you as just and only sincerely verbal expression. And yet, when you do that stuff, literally just meaning it as sincere verbal expression, and this is where I will say, it's not me making an excuse, but this is me being as accurate as I generally try to be, I in no way meant the emails that I sent to be an actual D-threat. I in no way meant them in any way sincerely. All I meant was to blow off steam on someone who said something annoying in a newspaper article. And I looked up his email address and I blew off some steam, and my whole life was thrown for a loop because of it. Now I see Matt McKinley talking about this person who supposedly sent out a tweet saying, and I'll read this tweet because it's so infuriating. I'll read the tweet and then I'll read the CNN headline that's posted underneath it. So this person supposedly sent out a tweet saying, I prefer a pay-per-view of him, being Obama, in front of the FIR blank blank ING squad. I do not want to waste another dime on supporting his life. And then third line, we could make some money back from televising his D, not dick. His D, the D word as opposed to life. And then fourth line is hashtag Obamagate. So this was something that CNN had apparently presented, and they presented it with this kind of headline. So I'll read it again, and I'll read it with similar restrictions. I prefer a pay-per-view of him in front of the F Squad. I do not want to waste another dime on supporting his life. We could make some money back from televising his D. Hashtag Obamagate. That's what this person apparently tweeted. I see it on a screenshot right here. And here's the headline. GOP nominee to run in public schools called for violence against Democrats, including executing O and B. I don't even want to finish the phrase, even though it was a CNN headline. In my life, I've been through enough where I don't want to even finish that phrase because I don't want anything misinterpreted as me saying anything. But, again, GOP nominee to run NC public schools called for V against D's, including E-ing O and B. You know, B and O, yeah, this does smell like BO, guys, because, like, seriously, that tweet, now here's the thing, if this person truly is a prominent person running for office, then of course it smells to high heaven that they would tweet something like this and then CNN would pick it up as part of their own horse show. It truly does smell to high heaven. It truly does, to someone who's looked into these kinds of things and seen over and over again how BS this stuff seems to be. It truly does seem like this might be more BS. Rule of thumb, if CNN's talking about something and making a big deal about something, like Alex Jones, for example, then I think you might get a pretty good idea that they don't really hate this person. What they're doing is they specifically want to promote the message that they're like. They don't want to promote the message of that tweet, probably, of course, but they're showing this to you in this segment for a reason there. And in this particular thing, in any case, in this particular thing, just like CNN talking about Alex Jones, it's clear that Alex Jones, at least to me, it seems like he's clearly a player in all of this. They wouldn't be talking about him if he was just some kind of like conspiracy theorist figure. Why don't they talk about David Icke all the time? David Icke is talking about conspiracy theory stuff just like Alex Jones. Why don't they make Jim Fetzer a household name? Jim Fetzer talks about that stuff. You know why certain people don't become household names, even though they may run into legal trouble for saying certain things? I think certain people don't become household names because they actually don't want those people publicized. Whereas someone like Alex Jones, he might have, you might associate him in your mind some way with the comedian Bill Hicks, for example. With someone like that, associated with what he's saying is something that they want to promote. I don't know if they want to promote conspiracy theory, so-called, although I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but they're not making a big deal out of Alex Jones because they don't want you to hear about him. They're not making a big deal about him because they don't want his message ever getting out to anyone. If they didn't want his message ever getting out, you know what they would do? They wouldn't fucking talk about it on TV, because when it's stuff like Jim Fetzer stuff, for example, where he has some like really striking criticisms about certain things, striking to the point where he's been in like government trouble for talking about certain things, according to the story anyway, it seems. Jim Fetzer is not all over CNN. You might be able to find some CNN story at some point on TV where they talked about Jim Fetzer or something. Or maybe it's in some era they talked about him a little bit. But like if they were talking about someone like Jim Fetzer, then people might actually look into his stuff. And when you actually look into his stuff, it's not just getting you mad and riling you up about how bad the government is generally, which is something like a Tucker Carlson might do, or something like an Alex Jones might do, or something like a CNN might do. It would be, of course. It would be, though, that it would be, they're not showing something to everyone in the country on CNN, or they're not showing something worldwide on fucking CNN because they don't want it publicized. They're not showing Alex Jones because they want to stamp down his message and get people not to listen to him about this topic or that topic. they want to, it seems to me anyway, that they're putting up a figure like Alex Jones to say this, to sort of give you an idea about what conspiracy theory is. If they put up a figure who said things that were more specific than Alex Jones usually says, then someone might look into that and they might have their worldview changed. They might have their mind blown and they might see through all of CNN's lies at once. But if they put up someone like Alex Jones, then most people are just going to see him and sort of say, oh yeah, those are those crazy conspiracy theorists. Or the people who see him and might be interested in him, or people who see Mike Cernovich in a Vice interview perhaps and might think like, oh, that guy seemed really strange, maybe I should check him out someday, like was sort of, it sort of struck me watching a Vice interview how cool Mike Cernovich seemed, and I didn't know who the hell he was. And that was still back in the time where, where I was like, I would have been watching Vice. I would have been watching Bill Maher. I wouldn't have been going to look for like Mike Cernovich stuff. But they weren't publicizing Mike Cernovich on Vice because they didn't want anyone to find out about Mike Cernovich. Like, that's not the fucking way it works. These people aren't, they're evil, and in a certain sense they are stupid, but they are crafty. But in any case, going back to the CNN thing, and this person, it looks like her name was supposed to be Michelle Morrow, the person who tweeted that. Now, whether or not Michelle Morrow is, being totally sincere in terms of like her presenting herself as someone who goes against the grain and stuff like that, here's one thing I can tell you. From reading that tweet, I'll tell you one thing. That's not a sincere call for V against D's, B and O. That's not a sincere call for V. You know what that is? At least if it was a regular person tweeting it. If it's someone tweeting it who is meant to tweet it maybe in a certain sense, and then CNN is meant to pick it up and they're meant to push a certain agenda by this person writing something that they didn't really just think of in the spur of a moment and like say to actually go against the grain. Whatever the case may be, if it was a real person writing that and it wasn't some kind of political theater, that is not a call for V. You know what that is? That there's something in this culture these days where words are totally meaningless. Where words are totally meaningless when it comes to calling out the problems with the propaganda that they show on TV. If you say, well, Dr. John Bell Dr. John Bell literally said that on a live television interview something along the lines of, we don't think more than 70% of the population is going to be sterilized by this given medical intervention, and you can look that up if you want. If Dr. John Bell goes on TV and says something like, it's not going to be 70% of the population who's sterilized by this medical intervention that they're pushing on a global scale right now. When somebody says something like that, where it sounds, this guy is a guy who's associated with the Bill and Mel Gibson Bates organization, you can look through my words there to see whom I might actually be referencing there, but this guy was associated with them, and he went on TV saying some very inflammatory things about some medical interventions that these people were pushing. And yet, if you show somebody the exact television clip of him saying that, if you give them his exact words, if you give anybody people's exact words about this, that, or the other thing that seem to call into question the veracity of a given story in the mainstream media, they won't listen to you at all. Oh, words are meaningless. Oh, Joe Biden said this, but he also said that. Words are meaningless. Oh, Donald Trump said this, but he also said that. Words are meaningless. Oh, this doctor associated with this public figure said something about this medical cure, supposedly. Oh, words are meaningless. It doesn't matter how weird it sounds that he mentioned 70% of the population being possibly sterilized by something, or saying that they're not going to be sterilized by something when I don't think anyone had brought up the idea of sterilization from these interventions things. You know, it is not really a case of that being something that you can then bring to your friends and family, to use Matt McKinley terminology for it. Matt McKinley came up with the term friends and family? No. Okay, but that's not something where in bringing it up to your friends and family, it's going to sway their attitude at all. Because one thing that we're told over and over again in our society, in some way or another, is words are totally meaningless. Words are totally meaningless. Something could say one thing one day, they could say something totally contradictory the next day. And as long as Anderson Cooper or somebody on fucking TV pretends that they didn't say the other thing, then they never said it. Words are fucking meaningless. And on the other hand, if you tweet saying, you know, and again, this tweet may not have been totally legitimate in some sense or another. I don't know. I haven't looked into it too much at all, but if you have a tweet saying, I would prefer a pay-per-view of someone in front of the F Squad and we could make some money back from televising his D, that's not a person saying, I am sending this tweet hoping that somebody does this. It's not a person saying that they're sending this tweet hoping that somebody actually does these things. This is a person talking descriptively and impressionistically and expressionistically, and mostly metaphorically, or I should say rather, above all, metaphorically, about this person. I don't know. You know, I don't know if I've made my point well enough, but in a certain sense, just ask yourself sincerely. If somebody that you knew wrote a tweet like that, do you think that they'd actually mean, like, I am writing this hoping that somebody reads it and then goes out and does it? Or do you think that they might have just been riled up so much by this fucking mental health industry of a propaganda industry that riles you up about every single topic under the sun and tries to get you as angry as possible at all times, and then somebody tweets something like this and just says, oh, you know what, somebody should just K him all, somebody should just K that person or something. Like, they're so angry that they tweet something like that, and then CNN covers it as if they were actually, as if they were actually saying, I am legally and officially calling for this to happen or whatever. It's like, that's such bullshit, and that's offensive bullshit to me, because my life was hurt because of someone misinterpreting something that I wrote like that. And that kind of bullshit where in one area of society they give you people who are literally saying stuff like that all the time and it's literally just entertainment, and then if you say something like that, suddenly you're a criminal.